you've seen this before. In the middle of a group of friends, everyone tries to seem interesting, cracks jokes, competes for attention. But there's always that one person who doesn't need any of that. They listen in silence. They look directly. They speak little, but when they do, everyone stops. No one dares interrupt. They don't seek to be noticed, yet it's impossible to ignore them. It's uncomfortable for many, because their calmness exposes others' restlessness. There are people who don't need to announce their arrival. They enter, and the atmosphere changes. The silence becomes heavy. The gazes adjust. Something breaks the normality. It's not arrogance. It's the firmness of someone who won't bend. That strength bothers people. It effortlessly reveals how fragile many are, dependent on acceptance and anxious for belonging. In times of social masks and voices begging for validation, being whole has become an act of rebellion. Nietzsche saw this clearly. The path of the strong is lonely, harsh, and for that very reason, true. Those who walk it don't need to threaten. Their very existence challenges. And for those who are always hiding, this is unbearable. The quest for a strong mind begins exactly where most give up. In discomfort, it's curious how we avoid suffering at all costs. We run from any sensation that takes us out of our comfort zone. But Nietzsche saw it differently. To him, suffering was not a mistake of the universe or a divine punishment. It was a requirement, a fundamental element in the process of growth and overcoming. Life, according to him, was not meant to be easy. And accepting this truth is the first step to becoming someone who intimidates, in the best sense of the word. Think about it. What really shapes your character? The peaceful days, or those when everything seems to fall apart? It's in chaos that true essence emerges. Running from discomfort is denying yourself the chance to grow stronger. No wonder many of the most resilient people are not those who had easy paths, but those who learned to endure and even seek what hurts. This doesn't mean seeking suffering gratuitously. It means accepting pain as part of the spirit's refinement. Bringing this into everyday life is simpler than it seems, and at the same time, it requires courage. Getting up early even when you don't feel like it. Taking cold showers that awaken the body and discipline the mind. Going to the gym on days when laziness screams. Refusing the temptation of procrastination when there's work to be done. These are small acts, but each carries the power to say to yourself, I am not ruled by comfort. Nietzsche spoke about the need to become who you are. And that process demands going through phases where everything in you wants to stop, give up, go back. The beginning of the journey is brutal because it destroys the illusion that you can grow without pain. Accepting discomfort is accepting life in its entirety. It's understanding that mental peace doesn't come from the absence of difficulties, but from the ability to walk through them without being destroyed. This is the foundation of the mind that will later become unshakable. The one that, by not backing down in the face of difficulty, naturally becomes threatening to those still trapped in the desire for everything to be easy and predictable. A powerful mind is not forged in extraordinary moments. It is born in the silent repetition of ordinary days. While many believe that mental strength is reserved for extreme situations or grand personalities, the truth is much simpler and more brutal. True fortitude is built when no one is watching. It happens when, day after day, choices are made in silence. Choices that seem small, but, when accumulated, create a chasm between those who give in and those who become unbreakable. Imagine the everyday scenario. The alarm goes off early. An inner voice whispers, Stay a little longer. Giving in is easy, but getting up even without wanting to sends a clear message. I am in control. In traffic or at work, irritation arises. It's instinctive to react, to unload. But pausing, taking a deep breath, and choosing your response instead of acting on impulse reveals the mind's command over emotion. In a diet, in tough commitments, in uncomfortable conversations, in all these situations, the conscious choice becomes the training ground for a strong mind. Nietzsche knew that the free spirit is not the one who does whatever they want at any time, but the one who can impose rules on themselves. He who cannot obey himself will be commanded by others, he said. And obeying yourself means practicing discipline. Unlike motivation, which is fleeting and volatile, discipline is the foundation that sustains the building of inner fortitude. It doesn't care whether you feel like it or not. It simply executes. Emotional control, in turn, is another non-negotiable pillar. How many times, in the heat of the moment, have impulsive words destroyed relationships? How many projects have been sabotaged by outbursts of anger or premature withdrawals? A strong mind learns to pull back before acting. Not in the sense of holding back, but in choosing the most strategic action, pausing, reflecting, and only then deciding. This is not passivity. It is concentrated power. And if there are still doubts about the value of these small daily victories, think about the consequences of their absence. The individual who never sets limits for themselves becomes a slave to their impulses. They live at the mercy of mood, circumstances, and external influences. Meanwhile, the one who trains their mind every day develops something rare and precious: autonomy. They are not driven by external forces, but guide their life based on firm principles and inner clarity. Thus, forging a strong mind in daily life is, in practice, declaring independence. It is saying, with each gesture, that you are in control, not others, not uncontrolled emotions, not circumstances. It is this kind of presence that begins, silently, to intimidate. Not because it imposes itself aggressively, but because, in a world full of people who easily surrender, the one who does not bend inevitably becomes threatening. No solid construction happens on fragile foundations. Likewise, the strong mind cannot stand firm while entangled in habits that silently corrode it. Nietzsche, in criticizing herd morality and the mindset that seeks comfort at any cost, already pointed to the need for rupture. Before creating the new, it is necessary to demolish the old. And in the mental realm, this means breaking patterns that keep the individual small, submissive, and predictable. Old habits do not scream, they whisper. They are in the automatic complaints about traffic, in the recurring postponement of tasks, in the constant search for someone to blame when things go wrong. Complaining is easy. It gives a momentary sense of relief and sometimes even belonging. After all, many around do the same. But each complaint reinforces an insidious idea that you are a victim of circumstances. And as long as victimhood reigns, true strength will never find space to flourish. Breaking it requires a conscious act. It means catching yourself in the middle of a complaint and stopping it. It means noticing the urge to make excuses and choosing the opposite path. This may seem small, almost insignificant, but it is in this moment that the mind divides between those who surrender and those who take responsibility. Excuses comfort. Responsibility, on the other hand, weighs heavy. It pulls the individual out of a passive condition and puts them face to face with reality. If things don't change, it's because they haven't changed yet. Nietzsche saw resentment as one of the most toxic expressions of weakness. To resent is to deny your own power, to envy what you don't have instead of conquering it. When the individual stops complaining, justifying failures, and fleeing discomfort, they begin the necessary cleansing for the emergence of the new. They stop living by inherited or imposed values and begin to define their own code. This, of course, does not happen without pain. Breaking old habits is like pulling out roots deeply intertwined with your personality. There is resistance, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But every time you choose not to follow the automatic path, you make room for something greater. Replacing victimhood with personal responsibility is, above all, declaring that you are willing to take the reins of your own existence. And when that happens, a noticeable change arises. The gaze becomes firmer, words gain more weight, actions are no longer justified, they are decided. That's when the world begins to notice, even without fully understanding, that someone different is standing there. Someone who no longer easily bends, who no longer hides behind excuses. Someone who, precisely because of this, starts to make others uncomfortable. At some point in the journey, rupture becomes inevitable. Not just with old habits, but with everything that had sustained the illusion of security until then. Nietzsche was relentless in pointing this out. When he declared that God is dead, he was not merely denying a deity, he was announcing the death of all existential crutches that man had created to escape responsibility for himself. From that moment on, there would be no more excuses. The burden and the glory of creating meaning would now fall solely on the individual. The Übermensch, the beyond man, is born precisely from this rupture. He does not accept inherited values without questioning them. He does not seek blind approval, nor does he submit to the comfort of ready-made truths. He is, above all, a creator. He creates his values, defines his path, and assumes full responsibility for the consequences. But to get there, one must dare to break the beliefs passed down as absolute, break the need to fit in, break even the idea that one needs to be understood. This process is not smooth. Nietzsche described 3 symbolic stages of transformation: the camel, the lion, and the child. The camel is the one who carries burdens, living according to the expectations and rules of others. He is obedient and submissive. The lion, on the other hand, represents the spirit that rebels. He needs to say no, to reject the impositions of the world and fight for his own autonomy. But there is still struggle. Only when the spirit becomes a child, creator of new values, playing and affirming life, does it reach true freedom. At this point in the journey, the individual begins to understand that living without crutches means living exposed. There are no guarantees. There are no maps. There is only one's own judgment and the courage to follow it. It is frightening. And that is exactly why few make it here. Most are content to remain as camels, bent under the weight of social expectations. Being a lion, and later a creative child, requires not only strength, but the willingness to lose. Radical autonomy means just that. It means losing acceptance from old circles. It means letting go of comfortable certainty to embrace creative uncertainty. It also means enduring the loneliness that arises when one refuses to play the game of appearances. It is precisely at this point that the mind becomes dangerous in the purest sense of the word. Dangerous because it can no longer be manipulated. It can no longer be bought. It can no longer be silenced. The Übermensch is not a distant or mystical goal. It is a symbol. It is the reflection of what happens when someone decides, with unwavering firmness, to live according to their own light. This rupture, painful and liberating, is what separates those who live in eternal adaptation from those who dare to be the exception. There is a silent price that all who seek true mental strength must pay. It is not displayed on social media, nor celebrated in everyday conversations. It is solitude, and it is inevitable. Nietzsche, and now the concept of the Übermensch, make it clear. Becoming free requires, above all, moving away from the collective. Not out of arrogance or disdain, but because certain paths can only be walked alone. The mind that begins to think for itself gradually becomes incompatible with mass thinking. When someone stops seeking constant approval, they cease to participate in subtle social games aimed at pleasing and belonging. This is frightening. The group feels when someone detaches. They feel it because, by freeing themselves, this person reveals, unintentionally, how dependent the others still are. And that creates discomfort. Living in solitude is not the same as being lonely. The difference lies in the choice. The strong choose to be alone in order to hear their own voice without interference. In that silent space, original ideas arise, clarity is consolidated, and true self-possession happens. It is there that the individual ceases to be a reflection of the environment and becomes their own source of value. They belong to themselves. Their emotions are not outsourced, their beliefs are not inherited. Everything they hold comes from within. But it must be acknowledged, this hurts. Stepping away from the collective means accepting that many will not understand your choices. Friends drift away, relationships change, judgmental looks become frequent. That is the price. And it is in this moment that the temptation to turn back arises. Being understood seems, for a moment, more attractive than being authentic. But returning is no longer possible. The mind that has expanded no longer fits into old frames. Nietzsche described the Übermensch as the one who creates his own values, and for that he needs isolation. It is in distancing that he sees himself clearly and renounces distractions. He does not seek acceptance. He seeks to be whole. And true wholeness requires letting go of everything superficial. In the end, what seems like solitude reveals itself as self-possession. It is the moment when the individual no longer belongs to anyone, not to ideologies, not to systems, not to other people. He owns himself. And this, more than anything else, is what truly scares those who still live in search of belonging at any cost. The moment a mind becomes untamable, it also becomes a threat, not through violence or aggression, but because its mere existence exposes the mediocrity around it. Nietzsche knew this. The Übermensch, the one who lives according to his own code, inevitably draws the wary gaze of the herd. There's no way to avoid it. The collective is unsettled by the individual who stands out, because this person represents everything they fear and, deep down, wish to become. Collective mediocrity is sustained by conformity. Unspoken rules govern interactions. Don't question too much. Don't think differently. Don't dare to grow beyond what is allowed. Those who stay within these limits are rewarded with acceptance, but those who cross them pay the price. Subtle attempts at repression begin. Sideways glances, ironic comments, veiled attempts to belittle. The group unites to pull back the one who dared to go further. But the truly strong individual does not waver. They understand that being dangerous, in the purest sense, is necessary. Dangerous not because they threaten physically, but because they threaten the status quo. A mind that thinks for itself is dangerous because it cannot be manipulated. A person who does not fear exclusion is dangerous because they act according to their own will. Someone who has faced and defeated their own inner monsters is dangerous because they are free. Overcoming collective mediocrity requires, first and foremost, accepting that you will be attacked. Criticism will come, isolation will be imposed, social doors will close. But it also requires standing firm without giving in to the temptation to conform just to be accepted. At this stage, the battle is silent. It's not about confronting others, but about not letting mediocrity contaminate you. The worst surrender is internal, when you start doubting yourself just to please the group. Nietzsche did not see surpassing the common man as an act of arrogant superiority. To him, it was simply an act of radical honesty. The Übermensch does not despise the herd. He simply does not submit to it. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his vision. His life, lived with authenticity and strength, is enough to inspire or to unsettle. In the end, overcoming collective mediocrity is about becoming dangerous in the only way that matters. Being someone who cannot be broken. Someone whose inner freedom is so evident that, without even trying, forces everyone around them to look in the mirror, and not everyone is ready for what they will see. Being mentally strong means accepting losses. Relationships break, approval disappears, and silence becomes a constant companion. But, in exchange, something rare is born: freedom. Freedom to think without chains, to act without fear, and to create without asking permission. The path of the Übermensch is not about superiority, it is about integrity. It is about fully belonging to yourself, even if that scares others. If you accept the journey, you will discover that living according to your own code is not easy, but it is real. And in the end, only what is real sustains a truly fulfilling life. If you enjoyed this content and want to understand more about life's questions, subscribe to the channel and share this video with those who are also among the awakened.